Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please, we're going to call the meeting to order. Please rise and let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate it very much, so thank you. As is our practice, we would like to start the meeting with granting anyone that needs a couple of minutes to address the city by giving people up 3 minutes if they wanted to address whatever concerns, tell us a good story about something exciting happening in town. What have you got for us? Anyone? Please, young man in the back.
I've just got a couple things I want to say. On September 29th is the nonprofit listening session. It's our third in a series of listening sessions that the city council people can listen to what is being said in Cold Spring, ideas. And this will be for nonprofits. That's for churches, religious, other nonprofit organizations. It's going to be September 29th. It's from 6 to 8. And it'll be in the community room of the Granite Community Bank.
Thank you.
Second thing is another one in a series. We have Coffee with the Mayor. That is going to be on October 3rd, 10 o'clock at Marnatelli's. And Jamie has graciously volunteered to be there. So it'll be, I think, Jamie and Bob, 10 o'clock, Marnatelli's, October 3rd.
Okay, Dan, before you sit down, I just want to add one more thing to that. For the October 3rd, it's an open invitation, so what's the agenda?
There is no agenda.
Okay.
We just simply invite people to come to the session and talk about what their concerns are for the city of Cold Spring. How can city of Cold Spring do things better? How can they improve? What do citizens like or dislike about the city of Cold Spring? So it's an open session, but you really have the opportunity to talk to the people that are the decision makers in your cities.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, then we're going to close that session down. And again, thank you very much. But I would like to make a plug for that section. Again, if there are other people that have other organizations that they represent and they would like to make an announcement similar to what Dan just did, please, this is your opportunity. All right, we're on, ladies and gentlemen, we're on item number 3 of the agenda. I need approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Jan, thank you. A second?
Second.
Jamie, thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Thank you. Item number 4, consent agenda. Chris, if you would, please.
The minutes from September 8th, 2015. Recommendation to approve the minutes as corrected from the September 8th, 2015 City Council meeting as presented. Minutes from September 11, 2015. Recommendation to approve the minutes of the September 11, 2015 City Council meeting as presented. Approval of Septoberfest. Recommendation to approve the outdoor event known as Septoberfest at the American Legion, 209 Main Street from 2 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. A one-day gambling license for the Country Snow Cruisers. Recommendation to approve Form LG 220 application for exempt permit to conduct one-day gambling for Country Snow Cruisers for a raffle to be held November 27, 2015 at the Great Blue Heron. Furthermore, to waive the 30-day waiting period for said permit. Hiring of Public Works Director. Recommendation to approve hiring John Stevie as Public Works Director as a probational employee, conditioned upon satisfying certification required by Midwest Occupational Medicine.
Council, any questions?
On C,
And see? Yes?
to approve, there's no date? Or am I looking at the,
Nope, I have the same question.
same
There's no
question?
date, yeah.
There's no date,
This Saturday.
Okay.
It's this coming Saturday,
26?
which would be the 26th of September. So let's try that one again. Letter C is to approve the outdoor event known as Septoberfest at the American Legion, September 26th. And the address is 209 Main Street. The event, September 26th, from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. What else do we know about that? Anything else?
I think they have outdoor music, live outdoor music, and food and drinks, and
And are they gonna
And
have,
fun.
Are they gonna have fun?
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, council? No. Okay, then if there are no more questions, then what I would ask is that we get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Dave, thank you. A second?
Second.
Jamie, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. We're on item number 5. Discuss the sign proposal for Cold Spring Commons. In your packet, ladies and gentlemen, you'll recall there were some handouts. Chris?
So Corey Belmont is here from Wausau Homes. They are located in the Cold Spring Commons building out on Highway 23. So you all have the drawing of where they want to show where they want to put the sign. It says proposed sign. It's in a 25-foot utility easement that the city has. Corey, do you want to elaborate on that?
Please?
Would you like me to sit here, Bob?
If you would, please.
As you see, there's also a picture of a sign that I was trying to get approved, and I just actually a week ago got a email back from the inspector, and the inspector said that that actually has to be redesigned by a structural engineer. So the sign's in with Scenic Signs out of St. Cloud, and they're redesigning it with the structural engineer. So the sign's gonna be a little bit different than this due to some of the engineering and design changes that we have to make. But through our meeting with the planning commission, is that correct? Mm-hmm. We had discussed the validity and so forth of what could possibly happen. Am I correct in saying that there's an easement, that there's going to be future sewer and water going through? Can I ask you, Brian, am I allowed to do that? And he had said that there is no utilities in there right now, but it could be 1 to 50 years from now that the city's going to want to dig up that area where we're going to put our sign. And if they do put the utilities through that area, there's a chance that we will not be able to put our sign back over the top of those utilities because of the depth of our footings that we'll need to have for the wind, the 90-mile-an-hour wind load and so forth that has to be. So they said that if we agreed at Cold Spring Commons, the ownership and myself, and those that are paying for it, would agree with the fact that we are going to be indemnified of anything if they have to remove it, that basically we would be able to say that it's okay if we have to move it somewhere else, if sewer and water goes through, but it's all at our expense. The city would not have to pay for the quote, putting it back. And we agreed with that, and I talked to the ownership, and Dan from O'Malley and Crone is also in that building, and he also said he gets it. We just need to 100% take ownership of it and say that if 1 in 50 years from now you guys decide to dig the utilities in, we would take our sign off because it's going to be a bolt-on to footings, and then you guys dig through, and then hopefully we can put it back in the same area, but it's not a promise, and we understand that. And I believe you guys were going to have something written up for me to say that when we actually do get the permit to put the sign in, that we are basically freeing you guys of any responsibility of having to put it back if you do have to dig it through that sign.
Yeah, I talked about it with the attorney, and she'll draft the agreement up, and we can have it recorded on the document so that even if, when it happens, if it's different owners, the new owners would still be binding by the agreement. I didn't take the money to, spend the money to have the agreement done until I had your approval, but that's, in a sense, what it would say.
So where are the utilities now for this building? Aren't they in that right away?
They're just behind it over, if you can see the hydrant. Is the hydrant on that plan? I'm not even sure. There's a lift station and a hydrant right on there. And that's where they go to right now.
Just to the west of where.
Yep, they're just west
Okay,
of where the sign proposal is.
okay. So really, we'd go through that area if we developed east.
Yeah, and
Yes.
there's already sewer and water further to the east, and if we end up, if the property's in between whatever coming to the city, we would connect the utilities
Okay.
there.
Because that's all township.
Yeah, and we could then get rid of the lift station and the gravity flow from this location to the east.
Is your concern the pilings that are going down into the ground or the slab that's on top of the ground? Or both?
I guess without seeing the exact configuration of it, at this point, I'm not concerned with it. It's just if we come through in the future, number one, to dig these utilities in, we're gonna lose whatever footing they have.
Okay.
And then number two, to put them back, if the way that you had talked about where there's space, they're likely would end up right over the existing utilities with not that much clearance, so I would be concerned about that.
So if they offset them off of the water and sewer line, would that be okay? Or is it that it's above the,
It's the fact that they're above, look right now possibly directly above them,
Okay.
and without knowing what the exact footing configuration is and what the configuration of the pipes in the future are, it's tough to say.
Okay.
But that would be my concern with, that's why we would, in the future, it may have to be something different based on what we do. There's a chance we could try and take these utilities and spread them out a little and then fit the sign in between, but that's all quite a ways down the road.
okay.
I don't know if it means anything, but Dan also brought up, which makes total sense, if the city takes over that Wakefield Township road and heads to the east, Dan said, why wouldn't we put it in the street where the utilities belong anyway? Which then we wouldn't have to worry about this, and that would be probably what would happen anyway.
Yeah, and that would depend on the age of the roadway. If the roadway needs to be redone anyways, then it's the logical place to put them. If the road's good, then we really don't want to rip it up to put the utilities in.
Council, what else you got?
This,
Oh, go ahead.
this, Corey, the sign that they want you to change, is that going to be like a mall sign in with all kinds of other businesses?
It's really gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be basically double of what that is. So it's gonna be 10, because that wasn't enough for the amount of businesses that were in there after we had the meeting, because there's actually more businesses going in there. There's another one that's moved in there that's gonna be opening their doors real shortly here. It's a photography studio, and they wanna be able to have enough for 6 businesses in there. So they're gonna basically say the same thing pretty much, except for it's gonna be 2 5-footers instead of that 1 5-footer. So it'll be 10-foot wide versus,
3 posts, right?
yep, 3 poles. So it'll be 3 pylons, basically, just like that, real simple. It's not gonna be a lit up sign or anything like that. It's just gonna be 3 pylons with bolt on.
And this will help the other business go through this one sign thing instead of everybody coming for a sign in.
Yeah, so each business within that building will be able to, you take a 2-foot by 5-foot sign and put it inside of that one.
So are they all going to share the cost?
No,
Corey's gonna,
Very nice of you.
part of wanting to get something to happen in that building is taking on some costs. As you guys noticed, there hasn't been a sign on that building for what, 10 years?
It's been a while.
So I'm trying to force that stuff, so that's why I'm here.
Excellent.
And the sign itself is, you'll take care of the permit for that to make sure the sign meets the sign ordinance?
Yep.
Okay.
My only question, my concern is, so right now we permit the sign, then Brian and his people put in some utilities. Do they then have to come back and re-permit the sign if we have to move it to some other location? Because again, what I don't want is the expectation that because they went through this process once, they're good. They would have to come back again.
That is what I've told the owners, exactly what you're saying, Bob. That
Perfect.
we would have to go in and reapply for basically a new location if it have to be, and get approved for a new location once the utilities go through.
Perfect. Perfect. And you said this one, I'm sorry, you said this one to planning, so the planning commission has looked at it, and their spin on it is,
Dave, do you wanna?
Yeah, we were okay with, if they were gonna take on the responsibility of getting it moved when we needed to, we had no problem with it.
okay, excellent, excellent. Then, do you have anything more? Should we act on this now? I mean, what do we have to do? Do we have to move anything on this, or we're?
I think you should make a motion to approve entering that agreement and Or do
So-
you want to wait till,
So you're gonna, well, what are you more comfortable with? Waiting until she gets the attorney? Now that we can tell her that we're comfortable with the concept, have her spend the money, get the permits, and then come back here for approval? Or should we just approve it now?
I think we should make some kind of motion so he has something to
So you
go
guys-
on.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the motion that the
Because
city
otherwise, he'll be
council.
doing something and then we get a crazy notion not to do it, so. For his sake, I think we should do some kind of motion.
Okay?
okay,
What do you, just?
To make a motion to approve the location of the sign contingent on the agreement drafted by the attorney.
Is that what you're moving?
Sounds good.
Is that what you're
I
moving?
think you can.
Okay, Fran made a motion.
I'll second.
Jamie's gonna second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Looks like you're one step closer to spending some money.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
And I hope this works. I hope your business quadruples. Is that enough? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're now on item number 6. Presentation on proposed apartment complex. Young man, if you would please.
Council members, my name is Corey Gerrits with, I'm the president of Alliance Building Corporation out of Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. You guys have probably maybe recognized my face once before. I've been once before starting a little conversation about potentially starting or getting some conversation going about a apartment complex, market rate apartment complex in the city of Cold Spring. So I'm here again to keep this conversation open. Mr. Mayor, you had invited me to a kind of an informal, just open conversation meeting about how the city of Cold Spring can promote growth within the city and whatnot. And so it's been about almost a year since that kind of went down, and here I am. And what I'm here to talk about is a apartment complex located on it would be on the outlot, I believe it's outlot, is it outlot A, Chris, is that what
Yes.
it's called?
Yep.
Outlot A, adjacent to the brewery site. Previously, we had talked about that site, and we had Dan Crone from Crone O'Malley do some preliminary boundary surveys of it, and that is the site that we are quite interested in, just due to the fact that the site has almost everything that we're looking for. It's adjacent to a residential neighborhood. It's a very flat, buildable site. It is it's enough land for what we like to do. Our intent or our plan at this point would be to maybe potentially put in a two-phase project. Somewhere around a total project unit of 50 units, maybe 25 and 25 or so, 27, 24, somewhere in that ballpark, and then potentially possibly even maybe another 50 unit, splitting that outlot A into two pieces of property. And Dan Crone had kind of, and I think I had presented a kind of a picture, and if there's a projector I could throw it up, but maybe this would kind of give you an idea of what it could potentially look like. This would be the brewery property, and this would be outlot A. So it would be split into two potential apartment sites.
So right now, you're only looking at half?
Well, right now, we'd be interested in purchasing or working with the city to come to some sort of agreement to purchase the entire piece of property. And then going forward, and with, potentially 50 units all at once, or a split of 25 and 25, or a phase, somewhat in a phase. The struggle that we run into, and it's a struggle that we've run into with several different projects like this, is within a small town, and I don't take offense to when I say small town, but outside of St. Cloud and Sauk Rapids and Sartell, where we've been doing a lot of our other buildings, we run into the market being a little bit different than those larger areas. So our our rent rates are a little less than that, which doesn't allow us to focus or spend as much money on the site or site acquisition. When I say site acquisition, I mean the land cost, any fees that the city might, have for the park dedication, sack and whack, trunk charges, things of that nature. So in a situation like Cold Spring, and we've had numerous conversations with Chris and Dan at the EDA and a few other people here, it's difficult to make a project like that work with the structure that the city is got in place right now. Land costs, sack and whack, park dedications and things of that nature. So I guess what I'm asking for, or what I'm proposing, is to work with the city of Cold Spring on how together we can come to an agreement, whether it be maybe some reduction in fees or reduction in land cost or something, to allow or to work with us to put some sort of project in that site. My partner, who's also in the development, and I have come to a number which they've kind of asked us where you think we could be at, and I think a starting number for us in our plan would be somewhere in the ballpark of $100,000. That's where we feel comfortable starting with the city on that piece of property, fees, and whatnot. And the big thing is, the big difficult situation is the road. That's utilities and everything are about 90% run in there. Just there's no road connecting the two. So that becomes another hurdle that I'd really like to try to work something out with the city, or try to come to some sort of agreement on how we can work together on and putting number one, that road in, and getting something going on that property to help promote some growth within the city on a market rate level. This would not be low income housing by any means. It's all standard market rate housing that we've been building, in and around the area. We've done this before, and a few other locations. I had mentioned Sauk Rapids and Sartell and St. Cloud and whatnot. And now we have a project that's just going to be starting in Paynesville that we've been working with now for some time, and that's the same type of situation that I got going with them, as we started an open conversation on how we could come together on what would work. So, I don't have a formal offer. I can present one, definitely can, but I just really wanted to come today and hopefully get some sort of communication going, Mr. Mayor, to try to help promote some growth, to try to get a project to town, to try to keep some local people in town, bring young families in, new people, keep them within Cold Spring, and to ultimately help the city kind of, grow in that development. I mean, I really feel like there's a strong need for that style of housing in Cold Spring. I think there's maybe just a few places to rent other than the River Oaks apartment building right now. A few small 8 to 12 unit complexes that are, I think, on the tail end of their, they were built maybe in the 80s or 70s, I'm not quite sure. But, so actually that's kind of where I'm at. I'd really like to try to work or keep some sort of open line of communication with the city to develop something like that. And I don't know where to go from there. I mean, I'd be willing to negotiate back and forth, or try to work something out on any sort of line. So that's kind of where I stand with it, and I'd like to try to put something together.
What I'd like to do now, open it up to the council in just a second to ask some questions and give you some feedback. But what I'd like to do first is just say thank you. Again, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to show people that Cold Spring is alive and it's growing, and it's good things are happening, and you're proving that by coming here and saying that you want to be part of this. So we want to thank you for that. With regards to building this complex, you mentioned that you've got several others going in other communities. In a little bit, I think I'm going to come back and ask you a couple of questions about that. But first, Council, anybody got some questions that you wanna throw out? Jan?
I just have one question for just clarification. Because the Outlot 1 on this cheat sheet or whatever we got, it says half of Outlot 1 for 50 units. That's not correct. It's all of Outlot 1.
That would be, yeah, we would put half of it on, 50 units on half of Outlot A, or Outlot
Okay.
1, whatever that would be. And then another 50 on the second half.
Okay,
But at this point, we would like to work something out to either, to control the whole outlot so that we would have first right of refusal, we would be able to do what we wanted to so that someone else wouldn't be able to come in or whatever, work something out on that. But yeah, it would be 50 and 50. Now this map kind of shows that whole outlot, but, well, no, I'm sorry, it's this way. But the split line is a little
okay.
skewed. There is another piece of paper that I have that shows that lot that you probably have looking a little differently.
More like this?
Yeah, and that would be, there was one that was showing the line drawing right through the middle of it, Mr. Mayor, but
So how many acres is Outlot A total?
0.82.
Is it 3.82
3.82.
times 2.
Okay.
yeah, I think it's right around 6 acres.
Oh,
Yeah. And 50 units, in our experience, 3 acres is a real good fit for a 50 unit. And, one of the things that, talking with Brian initially, maybe, up to this point, one of the big questions that we have, or one of the big hurdles that we have is in that industrial park or that area is ponding. What are we gonna do with stormwater pond? I know that, when Brian and I had talked even earlier today, that the pipe that's in the ground isn't probably capable of controlling the entire site. So I think in a situation like this, we may be able to work closely with Brian or with the city and retain majority of our water within the site, within our, digging our own ponds, managing our own stormwater within our site, which would help a lot of confusion and design within the whole complex and trying to enlarge the city's pond to bear, to handle the capacity of our water or whatnot. So that would be something that, we could work out or try to work out. But anyway, that's something that was always kind of in question, or how could we handle that? And I think with the site, with the entire 6 acres, we'd be able to put in one pond to handle the entire site. Put the pond in that first phase and then be able to add that second phase in the future and have that capacity to do that. So.
Council, what else you got? Jamie?
So, for the, I'm gonna back up here for a second. You had said that because of the small town that we're in, we wouldn't be able to get premium pricing for these.
Right.
However, are you also saying that you'd be able to fill these rather quickly? So isn't there a supply and demand issue saying we have no supply and we have high demand?
I think that, well, no one really knows. I mean, I'm speculating on the supply. I mean, it's my gut feeling, and that's what I have to go off of because we don't have anything to really go off of. So, I mean, I could be right, I could be wrong. That's the gamble that I take. I know, talking to some professional managers who have a better handle of smaller town rates, that we wouldn't be able to get what we can charge in Sartell versus what we can charge here in Cold Spring. And that's just gonna be the fact. And so our, preliminary pro forma takes that into consideration when looking at what we can afford to purchase land, what we can pay for fees and whatnot. I can tell you, construction cost isn't going down, it's only continuing to go up. And so, there's something has to give in order to make a project like this work. And we're willing to try to work with the city to make something happen. To answer your question, I feel there's a pretty decent demand here, and I think that and that's the reason why we would build it in phases, actually, too, because it eliminates a little risk on our part. I mean, we're talking in a total project somewhere around upwards of a $4 million project in 50 units. That is a big project to me, And so if I can cut my risk in half and do a 25 and 25, it makes it a little bit more feasible on our end to do that. But my gut is telling me that I think they're, just due to the fact that the city, with the growth that it's had and the lack of apartments in the market rate, would fill hopefully rather quickly.
What is market rate?
You know, I would consider the River Oaks apartment market rate, but on the higher end. It has a couple features that this building wouldn't have, and maybe I should back up and tell you a little bit about the building and what I'm envisioning. The building would be a 50 unit with a 3-stop elevator, a service elevator for people located centrally within the building. It would have a mixture of detached and tuck under parking. And when I say tuck under, I mean you'd be driving in around the back end of the building or somewhere around the building where you'd be able to drive in, close your garage door, be able to exit your vehicle and get into a common space or a corridor, and then take the elevator or walk to your unit. The difference that the River Oaks project has is they have actual drive under parking, so the car can physically drive completely under the building and find a parking spot somewhere within there, you know, heated, controlled. Now, tuck under wouldn't be heated and it wouldn't be, you know, security when, I mean, it's just an individual basically parking stall. So there's a little difference in the style of building there. So that you see on more your upper scale apartment buildings is the drive under parking. Amenity wise, I'm not sure, I don't know enough about that building to know what amenities they have. Our buildings would have a fitness room, a large meeting or community room. Some buildings we've put in have a theater that always kind of seems to be a hit or miss, just not sure. I think initially we'd probably start with a theater and decide what the demand is, how well it goes over. So amenity wise, it would be you know, very nice apartment building, right at what, you know, we feel that the city would be able to bear for rents. Again, I don't know specifically what those rents would be because we haven't, you know, really gotten that far yet. But talking with, you know, and we work with I&H Property Management out of St. Cloud. They manage the buildings that we work with and we put up. And they have a pretty good handle of what, you know, the rent rates would be and whatnot. So, and they also give us some ideas on what they think we should put in, what we shouldn't put in the buildings for amenities and whatnot. And the other thing too, each unit would have an in-unit laundry. In some cases, we've also put a laundry, kind of a commercial, larger laundry for your bibs and quilts and stuff like that on the unit. Some we have not. But this building would include that as well. So it's really a market rate. I mean, when we say that, it's going to be your mid to upper end outside of the drive under parking apartment building. Steel siding on the exterior, some masonry, some sort of masonry veneers on the exterior, detached, tuck under, and outside parking.
Excellent. Jamie, what else you got?
That's all.
Dave?
For now, yeah.
Right now, nothing.
Jen?
I like the idea of getting something going up there. I mean, I
Absolutely.
really like the idea of it. As far as giving away the farm, I can't comment on that yet, you know? I mean, I have, you know?
I completely understand.
I can't comment on that, but
do.
absolutely, I would be looking at ways to look at doing things and what accommodations we can make, but.
Brandon, what do you got?
Same as Jan.
Okay. Then I have a question for you. Do you want to publicly negotiate this thing right here, right now? Or would you rather work with committees and try to figure out a different route?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was kind of hoping that walking away from this meeting, we could maybe form some sort of subcommittee of some sort
Okay.
and be able to continue a conversation with the council on what, maybe coming to some sort of agreement on what we could do to work together and put something together on a project.
First of all, again, we love the idea, so we're interested. Now, how we're gonna do it is what we're gonna get to you in just a second. In our past, in our present, in our future, do we usually have a couple council members? Do we usually send it to the planning commission? What is the normal process? You and Brian what's the normal negotiating committee?
I don't know that we have set much precedence on this, so I think whatever you guys decide is
Okay.
fine.
EDA,
EDA,
through
would-
the EDA,
let the EDA
because
negotiate?
they've been working through us anyway.
Well, I think that makes, in my opinion, I like that perhaps the best. And again, the reason I like that the best is you hammer out the numbers, then we take it to planning and let planning go through and make sure that all the things that we need to have done, get done, and then it comes back here for approval or disapproval or whatever. I love the idea of negotiating through the EDA. Council, what do you think of that idea?
That's a good place to start, 'cause
Yeah, I
we've
think
got
it-
two council members
yes.
on there.
Exactly.
Yes.
There are some, I was just gonna ask,
two
are there,
council
there are
members.
council
Two
members
council
on the,
members on.
that would be good, because I
Yes.
think that helps move it along,
Yep.
so that you are not just spinning our wheels in one area, we've got
Yep.
everyone
So
informed.
those two come back
Excellent.
and report, basically.
Okay.
So ultimately, we could end up with 4 units on there, 425
Well, it would be,
units, I mean,
it would
in the
be,
long term,
well, it
maybe.
would, probably what it would be 2 buildings built in 4 different steps.
Okay.
So it would be, like I have drawn on this drawing, it would be basically ultimately 2 buildings.
You'd build like
But we
one
may
wing.
build one wing and then add that wing later, and then
Okay.
decide to build that wing and add that wing later.
Okay.
You know?
So one of those is in lot 1 and the other one's in lot 2
No,
then, or
there's-
what? Or all of
One
them out
goes, yeah,
here?
one goes like
Yeah,
this, and
if
the other
you-
one goes,
the other one
goes
goes
like
like
that
that,
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
you
Yep.
can see how, the line is kind of
And
drawn,
So that's how it sits right now. So this is a 50 unit, and this is a 50 unit.
Okay.
Again, council, what I would ask you to do is, we're gonna send this to the EDA for them to work something out so they can come back with some good news for us.
That's it.
But my question to the council is, do you wanna help give EDA some guidance? Right now, you see by what Jan referred to a minute ago as our cheat sheet. On the cheat sheet, you see roughly what the costs are involved. At the same time, the potential developer is saying that they have a number as well. The numbers are quite a bit different. Council, do you have a preference as far as EDA, start with soften a position on the lot price, or start with hold firm on the assessment for the road? Do you have a preference of what order these things are to be?
and maybe we can continue this conversation with the EDA and whatnot, but in past developments, we've done a subsidy agreement because it's a, maybe I'm tilted my hand too early to you or whatnot, but what it is it's a subsidy agreement, which in a sense says, okay, we're gonna buy that property from you, and we negotiate a price from it, and we've got a set amount of time to do what we're telling you to do, or we have to pay some sort of penalty or whatever. So we've been able to use that as something too that at least sets a little bit of the city at ease, knowing that, you know, we as developers have to follow through and do what we're told, or we've got some sort of, you know, penalty of some sort that, you know, we would have to, you know, deal with. So that, you know, is something too that we've been able to work with cities on and use as more of a tool for comfort on everyone's end as well. So something we can discuss, I think, as we get further down the road with the
Excellent.
conversations.
And my last question, I think, is gonna be, you told us that you're doing a deal with Painesville, and then also St. Cloud, Sauk Rapids, Sartell.
Well, we're building
Does each city give you the same
Well,
deal?
no, every deal seems to be different, Mr. Mayor. Painesville, we had conversations, well, I don't remember when we started back with them, but I mean, it did take quite a long time to get to the final endpoint, and now we're at the point right now where we ended up purchasing city-owned property. We paid $1 for it. But there was a subsidy agreement, and there was a value that the city had paid for that property. And if we don't do what we're telling them we're doing, then we end up having to pay them the price of the property that, you know, we negotiated on. They in turn had minimal sack and whack fees, which also really helped our development. And we actually were adjacent to a city pond, which we were able to use for our stormwater drainage to their pond. We decided to, for the city, to increase the size of the pond, double the size of their pond, to send our water to theirs, to yet take all the water that they have, and to provide a little bit of a cushion, you know, for the pond if there ever becomes any more demand for it as well. So that was just a case that worked out in Painesville. St. Cloud, you know, a different situation. Sartell, a different situation, which did include a road that we ended up having to work with them on putting a road in. So it seems like every city is different, and that's why, you know, trying to work together and putting together a subcommittee, I think, is probably a real good start for us moving forward. So,
And what's your timeline?
well, if everything would work out, we would be real happy to be starting on something, you know, next spring. These things do take quite a bit of time, so we're coming into the, you know, winter, which gives us a little time to work together and to try to put something together so that we can be ready to go in the spring.
Excellent.
Do you have any projects that are in the building phase right now?
Yeah, we've got a project in St. Cloud and a project in Sartell. It's a phase 2 of, it's the second phase of 2 buildings. We've got, we've got several projects, but the apartments, so this will be the Painesville will be our third, which we're planning to start next week.
Oh, gonna break ground.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got one in St. Cloud and 50 units in St. Cloud and 50 units in Sartell. Sartell is kind of a tough one to get to because they're doing all that roundabout work, so you can't really get too close to it until they open up that new roundabout off 133. But if you happen to drive down 133 heading toward from St. Joe to Sartell, off to your left-hand side is the 2 buildings that we had. One that's fully completed and full, and the other one that will be complete next spring, come, you know, April, May, somewhere in there.
Excellent. Again, it's the wish of the council, I think we send this to the EDA. Dan, please work with them, hammer something out, and only report back good news. Excellent. Council, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Council,
Can I ask one last question? The
Yeah.
sketch you have of the building?
You know, I brought
they
something along.
Pretty similar?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
you
not
know,
an exact, but it's a,
You know, this is the difference. This is a building we put up in St. Augusta. We put where the old Cedar Point Ballroom was.
yep.
This was the design that we went with them. It had the drive under parking, and this was just one. This wing came out this way, so it was an L shape. So you're seeing this leg. This is the front of the building, and then this leg comes out. Parking. You drove in and you went underground, completely underground, and you could come out on that end. Now the building that we're talking about, I brought this just to show kind of how the building could look from the exterior. The buildings that we're talking about would look very similar to this, but on the back side of the building would have the drive-in parking.
Okay.
These are 3-story?
3-story.
How tall are they? Are you usually?
Well, every city has its requirements on
Yeah.
height.
That's
So we have to, first of all, review what the city's requiring and then meet their requirement. And
there's no design yet for
No,
here.
no. But,
exact
you know,
design.
we've
Okay.
been able to meet every city that we've worked with's requirement and height, and they seem to be real close with pretty much every city, give or take a few feet. So
Okay.
anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Right,
you.
Thank you.
all right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on item number 7 of the agenda. County State Aid Highway number 2, also known as Red River Avenue, improvements and assessments. Should we call Brian up and have him discuss it with us, or should we?
Yeah,
Brian
would be good.
Brian, we're gonna call you up and have you help with this discussion, please.
All right.
So the first part of this, I understand, is we're just going to take care of some technical business part of it, and then later on, we're gonna discuss how we're going to pay for it. Is that what we're doing, or how are we handling this? Or are we merging them into one?
not to drop it on the floor. You guys want the light off here?
I think so.
Okay.
Do you want Ann to come up here too and talk about what the planning talked about?
If she wants to.
So I guess to give you a little bit of an update, we had, last week we had the planning commission meeting, and as you recall, the council had sent, County Road 2 project, specifically the streetscaping and the method of assessment, back to the planning commission. So we had a pretty good discussion, I think about a 3-hour discussion on, last Wednesday, going through a lot of the streetscaping items, going through a lot of the assessment, or how their approach to assessment was, and then they made a recommendation to the council. I believe that was included in your packets. Chris summarized it nicely. So I guess first we could go with that, and if there were any, we can kind of go through it, I guess, if you want, or I can go line by line and kind of talk about the planning commission's recommendation, unless someone from the planning commission would like to do that instead.
You go right ahead, Brian. Unless Ann would like to do.
So kind of going down the list, first thing we looked at was streetlights. Had quite a bit of discussion on streetlights, wanted to keep a consistent look. As you remember, we're using a streetlight similar to the one in Granite Landing, just to keep a similar look between the new development and the older downtown. What they ultimately decided on was sticking with the 7 lights per block in the core downtown. Now when I refer to the core downtown, that means First Street South to First Street North, 2 blocks through there. So we'll refer to that quite a bit throughout here, but that's what we refer to as the core downtown. Outside of that, looking at 5 lights per block. So cutting it down a little bit. It's a good way to do some cost savings because the lights are about $7,500 a piece. So by cutting 10 of them out, we just cut $75,000 out of our budget. And it's going to give you a very similar look, and you're not in the downtown area, it doesn't have to be as intense of a light. One of the other things we talked about is that you don't necessarily need full light coverage. You can have gaps between the light coverage. Right now, even it's just lit on the corners. So this would be an improvement over that. So that was their recommendation, was 7 in the core downtown, 5 elsewhere. Also looking at making sure we have GFI receptacles on them for Christmas lights, the ability to hold banners, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but in the core downtown, having the ability to hang planters on the light poles. Moving down, talking a little about trees. The decision was from Highway 23 to First Street North, so the north edge of downtown, sticking with the plan of 7 trees per block, kind of offset from the lights as well as how they fit with the environment. And then from First Street North up to the roundabout would only be replacing the boulevard trees that we have to remove as part of the project. Which is something we do anyways in a project, is having to replace those trees. So no new additional trees north of that area. Plantings, we talked about having hanging baskets in the core downtown area off of those 14 street lights. Eliminating a lot of the other ground level plantings just for maintenance issues. Focusing on some of those hanging ones and trying to pull together a garden club or some volunteers who would be able to take care of some of those in the summer. Then we talked about the area at the roundabout, and so in the center of the roundabout there's a flagpole that's just north of the intersection right now, and with the county's approval we would take that flagpole, put it in the roundabout, as well as then put perennials in there every year. So putting plantings in there. We would also put irrigation in the roundabout just to maintain those flowers.
Can we have a flagpole or a structure in that roundabout?
I think a flagpole will probably be okay. There's other roundabouts that we've put flagpoles in and they've been okay. We'd have to get it okay from the county, but I think they're really trying to avoid heavy, large objects like
Yeah.
granite boulders.
Granite boulders.
So we'd run some power, run some irrigation. That would also be the only place we would put irrigation on the project. Because we're eliminating a lot of those ground level plantings, we wouldn't necessarily need it. Trees would be, the maintenance would be easier to do from a truck or water in a different manner that you wouldn't necessarily need to put in the cost of the irrigation. So there was another cost savings of cutting out plantings, cutting out some trees, cutting out some irrigation. The granite banding, two to one vote to remove the granite banding from the project entirely. And I should mention as well, before the planning commission meeting, I had about an hour conversation with Jeff Martin, who was the original designer who came up with the downtown plan. And we talked about if there were cost-cutting measures, where are the places you would cut most efficiently? And where would be the places you would cut without losing the feel of what you're going for? How do you cut things out but not lose what you're ultimately trying to do? One of his suggestions was that granite elements are better off if they're vertical. Columns, bollards, granite benches, that the granite banding is more of a premium item. It's tougher, it doesn't have the pop that the other granite items would have. So the planning commission recommended removing all of the granite banding, saved us about $50,000. Granite columns, so similar to the ones like we have at the Granite Community Bank in Granite Landing. We had those at several locations, and as part of this we said we were reducing it from 5 to 2. So the 2 would be down on the near Highway 23. Jeff's thought on that was you need something unique to draw people into the city away from the highway. So that was the plan there, or the recommendation. Granite bollards, the recommendation was to only put them down by Highway 23. What those would be in between the sidewalk and any parking areas, so at the Holiday and the SA. So just basically only down there, not at the north end.
Is there a safety issue with the roundabout and the brewery parking lot as far as needing bollards along there?
I don't think you really need the bollards. They're more of a decorative item, more of a visual separation. Because in reality, there's only, even down on the south end, there's going to be 5 on each side, so it's not a physical barrier for every parking stall either. The recommendation on benches was to cut those from 12 down to 4. Really 4 just in the core downtown area. To be determined locations. Bike racks, reducing those from 7 to 4. Again, all of those in the core downtown. Trash receptacles from 10 to 4, putting 2 in downtown and 2 by either side of the trail where it crosses Red River. I have here the GFIs, again, cutting them away from where the trees were at. We were going to possibly put Christmas lights on trees. Gets to be a lot more of a hassle trying to put an outlet in the ground, so we stuck with just the outlets on the light poles. And then the utility modifications that we've talked about in the past, the burying of some of the overhead services, and then especially the block from Main Street to First Street North, keeping that, burying that, or relocating some of that, keeping that in the plan. So those were the recommendations based on the actual items. So I guess maybe first we want to talk about the items before we go into the assessment recommendations.
That's probably a good idea. Council, what do you got?
The one thing, the granite columns, we also said they need to say the cities have the city name of the city on them too. Yet it's just something that we thought would be good.
Anything else? I think it's to the planning commission and to you, Brian, and the rest of the staff, I think this is a great step. Again, I think what we're trying to do is dress up Red River Avenue. We're trying to make a statement, and I think we're still making a statement, but by cutting out this extra $275,000 or more, I think we're making it more affordable as well. So to the planning commission and everybody that worked on this much of it, again, our thanks. It's a really good start, I think. Council, you got anything else with regards to the amenities themselves? Okay, Brian, you want to continue?
All right, moving on, we had, I believe, at the planning commission, we had 9 different assessment scenarios to look at. We focused on just a couple of those, keeping in mind that we need to assess at least 20% of the project, though that's state law if we're going to bond for the project. And in reality, we want to get that number over 20% because we need to give ourselves a cushion, because keep in mind, these are all estimates at this point. So that 20% is based on the actual numbers, so we definitely need a cushion in there. So the recommendations from the planning commission were to take the street light costs out of the streetscaping category and put them in a street assessment. Now they ended up being their own in some of the handouts you have. They end up being their own category for a few reasons, but basically they will be assessed. The recommendation was at the same rate as a street, which is 65 city, 35 or property.
And the properties north of the roundabout would not be assessed for the streetlight
They would not be
piece
assessed
of
for the
it?
streetlights. So that's why it ended up having to come out into its own items.
Okay,
They don't have.
they don't have any, yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be getting any, so. The city would pay 100% of the gateway expenses, which would include the 2 columns by Highway 23, and then all of the costs inside the roundabout, irrigation, plantings, power,
Flagpole.
flagpole moving. Basically, I think the thought there, and then correct me, Dave Rand, if I'm incorrect here, was that those are items, the gateway elements, we want to draw people in, so that's why the recommendation was that the city pick those up entirely.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And then the remainder of the streetscape costs, so those items that weren't previously mentioned here, would be split. We looked at 2 scenarios. We looked at a 65-35 and an 80-20 city property owner. And those would only be for the commercial properties from Highway 23 to First Street North. So from Highway 23 to the north end of the core downtown was the recommendation. And only the commercial properties. And really in that stretch, we only have 2 properties that are not commercial. 2 residential properties. So almost everyone. And so that's I had laid on your desk. We have we have a couple of different sheets. This one here is just a little bit of a breakdown of where the actual amenities are going. The other 11 by 17 is just a little bit looking as well at the individual amenities. This also takes into account the soft costs. So admin, engineering, construction observation, all of those costs associated with the project, so that we take and divide that out over every item so the price does go up. Moving on, then you have 3 different stapled packets. So the 3 are the 2 assessment scenarios I just talked about here that take the rest of the project to remain the same as the feasibility report, except that the the street lighting was assessed at 65-35 to everyone, basically from the roundabout south. That includes residential and commercial properties. The gateway elements were 100% to the city, and the remainder was assessed of the streetscaping was assessed to the commercial properties from First Street North to Highway 23. And there's two different packets, one's at a 65-35, the other at an 80-20. The third packet you have is the original 65-35 everyone. Now keep in mind that also includes the full streetscaping. I didn't go through and reduce the streetscaping. I wanted to simply give you that for reference as to what was in the feasibility report. And in those you have the front page has the project financing. So this is kind of a similar page that's in the feasibility report. Breaks out the different categories, project costs, how we come up with the assessable unit, the assessable rate, as well as the discount in the top. The chart below that is the estimated revenue generated by the assessments for these items. So, for example, on the 65-35 that the Planning Commission talked about, the generated revenue is in that $890,000 number. So then if you look at the second page, on the back of that one is the tax sheet that Chris had helped put together. So that takes the project improvements, it brings in the assessments, and in the green there it tells us what the assessment percentage is. So for example, on this one we're at just over 30% total. And then it also gives you some ideas on what the tax rate increase would be, as well as some examples with some differently valued properties. And then page 3, 4, and 5 are similar to what was in the packets before. It's basically 3 sheets that are snapshotted out of the assessment roll, just to give you a little idea of a couple of different properties. The brewery is on one of them, there's some residential on one of them, there's also some commercial that's in residential size lots. So it just gives you a little snapshot of that you can compare one to the other from the different scenarios.
Brian, where does the moving of the power lines show up in these?
Moving of the power lines is included under streetscape.
255,000.
It's in this category, it's in this. I'm thinking it needs to go, it must be in that. So it's in the streetscape core and commercial and streetscape core residential, it's in that total?
Yes, it should be.
Brian, we were also saying some of that water and sewer does not have to be replaced, but it looks like here the footage just includes all of it.
The footages should only be,
We were talking like
For
for
those-
Main Street South, it was all
the
good.
footage should only be for those properties that are benefiting. If you look at like the street, the number of units on that is 6,300 feet. Sewer and water, you're only at about 4,500. So that's taking out those properties that are not benefiting
The
from it.
total length of that street is, I mean, what we're going to do is 6,300 feet from the roundabout to the highway? Or what is our total length?
The total length would probably be, we're looking at about half of that. That total length there, that 6,300 is really up one side, down the other. And that's not just a measurement up one and down the other, it's where we look at each lot individually and say, how do we assess this lot? How do we, if it's an odd size lot, how do we fairly assess it? So it's the assessable footage for all of these.
Okay.
Council, what else you got?
I'm just looking at a very original one that we did, that packet, that stapled packet, that's the original one. The streetscape total was 1.1 million. And now in the newest one, it's 365,000. And the streetlights I know came out of that.
Mhm.
So there's those two numbers together. And is the rest the reduction? Is that where the numbers come out?
The new proposed is 2,830,000 instead of
217.
3,217,000. That's what we've reduced it down to, Brian.
I'm gonna just double check that here.
And what I understand, and the city's expense of that, part of it is 1,900,000, I'm gonna say $2 million. And then that'll be assessed, whatever we figure, 80-20, 65-35.
The
What's
total,
the other scenario?
the total city expense would be the actual, at the bottom there is the actual total city expense after the assessment.
So that's after the assessment, so that's what the cost that's gonna be.
So that 1,939,000,
Yes.
1,991,000.
Depending which one you look at.
Yes, depends on which one you look at.
I'm just going by what amount is what we're going to assess, everybody gets assessed for.
The whole city, that would be
Yeah.
that one, right?
That's the
That
1,939,000.
be the bottom of the
expenses. 1,000,009.
The ass-
That's what the city, that's how we're going to
Yep.
assess
Yep.
that amount
Yep.
to the city.
Right, the assessment proceeds are the properties in the reconstruct. The
And,
city expenses citywide.
and the way I understand, minimum of 20% we have to, for bonding, correct, Brian?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So now we have to choose, or don't have to choose, or we have to choose now how much we're going to make the city residents pay for, correct? Is that what our next,
That's where we're
That's
headed.
our-
I think that's where we're headed.
that's where we're headed?
Brian, what I was wondering is, if we, the council, came to a preferred amount, a preferred way of doing this, could you put this information on the website? So between now and the next meeting, the general public can go look at what their assessment would be, so the general public can look and see what the numbers would be. And then at our next meeting, we can actually approve it. So basically what I'm saying is we could give you an indication of what we're leaning towards, make that public so people can see it, and then actually approve it at the next meeting. Can we do that? Or is there a reason we can't do that?
Schedule.
We're really pushing, we're really starting to push schedule.
Okay? Tell me about, we're really starting to push schedule. What is it that we're pushing?
County is working on their design right now. They submit theirs to the state. We're looking at getting this, probably putting it out for bid in the middle of January.
Okay?
So that leaves us, so if we don't approve it until the middle of October, we have November, December, we really have 2 months to design, which is, it gets, because if you start to look at the Christmas time period, et cetera, you really kind of lose that time.
Why, you guys get time off for that? Okay, but no, my question is, isn't there a resolution in our packets today to authorize a portion of this? That's different than what we're talking about right now, isn't it?
Well, it's to prepare the plans and specs and order the bids, right, Brian?
Okay,
So in order to do that, I think,
I don't think we have to even order the bids yet
Or-
at this point.
or you prepare the plans and specs. So I think to do that, they need to know what's going into the project. I think if you want another month to decide if you want 65-35 versus 80-20, that would probably be okay,
I
right?
think we can do that, yeah, because we're,
So I think we
Trying to
can make the
think of
decision on the design tonight, I think.
well, that's what I'm starting to hear, is that that almost has to be done tonight. So if we make that piece of the decision, what is streetscape going to be? What is going to be included in the project? We have to decide that tonight. But is it going to be 80-20 or 65-35? We have time to put that information out so that the public can see that information, and we can make that final decision next meeting.
That, I think so, is that
The
our,
only question I would have is with the
Okay.
429 process, do we need to have the assessment scenario figured out in advance of approving plans and specs? That's the only question I would have.
Is it then when I'm looking at tax rate, home value, business value? I'm looking at the back ends of it. We have to choose, like our new annual tax is a new one, if it was 884, for a 20, assuming a $200,000 house at 884, the annual tax is the new one, is going to be 991.50. The difference of this scenario is going to be 106.54, the difference. That's what we have, I don't know, I think the residents would like to know if that was the route we were gonna go, or if we were gonna go with that route of 884, our current taxes on a $200,000 house, which the new would be is going to be the split, or we're going to determine how much of the downtown is going to pay for it, or how much. I'm more concerned beyond the streets. I realize what's going on, Red River and that. I realize who lives on it and who does business on it. My concern is the person living way out in the southwest part of the town. What is that? What cost is that going to be? What are we going to throw against their house to help us with this? That's my concern. So, and in front of me, I have 2 scenarios, correct? Or is there more?
There's actually 3 of them.
there's
There's
3.
3 of them, but the third one was the old one.
Yeah,
Right.
the original one.
Yeah, these are the new ones.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
those
I'm
are the
going
two
by.
ones,
Okay.
and those came out of the planning commission recommendation.
All right. In my words, and Councilman Ramler's words is, who's gonna howl the most, right? Is that what that's my saying. Okay, if we go one route, the Red River people will howl. If we go the other route, the other ones will howl. The other residents from the other side of towns, they all had their streets fixed and everything and done, and I am sure they are still paying on their assessments. And now, if they're going to be added more assessments to this year, the thing that I want is explained to me so I can explain it as they come to me. So these 2 scenarios, we're not really going to discuss, or we're going to discuss them, but we're not going to make a decision on these 2, correct? Or what I was listening, or did I hear this different?
We could.
We can, but that's what I asked is, can we postpone it if we wanted to? Can we postpone it until the next meeting to give you a chance to get beat up early, and then we'll make the decision, and then you can get beat up again?
Yeah. Okay, but Brian stated that we need to make a decision in order to go on with the project, because he wanted to know what our assessment capability is. No?
The reason I'm just concerned about schedule is getting the actual design done ahead of bidding the project.
So if we agree to the planning commission's recommendations for that part of it, would that be enough? Or do you want the rest of it also, the assessment?
And that's what he was checking to see if
Fran,
the
let me ask you
429
this.
process.
On those 2 copies that you have in front of you, if you turn to the first page, are they both 820,000 for the amount of the assessment themselves? Down in the bottom?
No, there is, the first one is a 1,000,055, and the
Okay.
other one is 838.
Okay, so the numbers are different, so we really do need to decide what, again, my question was, can we split it? Can we separate it into two pieces? And based on what Brian is telling us, I think what I'm hearing is, the answer is no, we can't, because we have to tell Brian it's either gonna be 800,000 or $1 million, and if we tell him it's $1 million, then it can't be 65-35 because the numbers don't work anymore. Right?
I think the clearest thing would be to approve them both at the same time. Order the improvements and really accept. By ordering the improvements, I think you would kind of want to have an idea of what you're doing for assessments at the same time. I think if we ultimately do need to,
Yeah.
and it sounds like the public input is very important, and I agree with that. And if we need a little more time for it, I would.
So the $1 million one is pretty much.
I think we can make it work. I think the only thing is, if we're going to delay it, I think we really have to approve it, something, that first meeting in October. I think we can fit it in, but it's gonna be tight.
Another thought is, what Brian, I think, is questioning is on the 429 process, not positive that it's okay for us to put off the decision on the 65, 35, 80, 20. What you could do is decide tonight, and you could change it later. That's my understanding. Does that sound right, Brian? I'm pretty sure Rusty told me that.
Okay.
I'm gonna steal these from you for just a second.
Okay.
Okay, the council, Jan, Fran, here's the question I was asking. If you take the two different versions, so one of them is the 80-20 split for commercial only, and 65-35 for all properties south of the roundabout. That's the one scenario. The other scenario is 65-35 commercial only, 65-35 all properties south of the roundabout. Those are the two different scenarios. What I was asking is, go down now to the lower right-hand corner, second number from the bottom. That's the number that I was asking about. If we gave Brian that number tonight, can we then later on figure out which route we want to go as far as going from there? The difference between those two numbers, if my math is any good at all, the difference between those two numbers, one is 890,000, one is 838,000, so it's $50,000 to $60,000 is the difference between the two different scenarios. So what I'm asking is, if we would love to give the community time to react, can we select the greater of the two numbers for the special assessment number? In other words, use the $890,000 number and say, Brian, use that, make the calculation, and we'll give you a final decision on the 13th.
Because it always feels better if it's less, then all of a sudden we gotta hit them with more. I would be for what.
That was my question. Again, I put it in more detail now, but that was my question. So, first of all, Brian, are you comfortable if we give you a guidance, give you some, this is what we want you to do, can you make this work?
So I'm looking at the League of Minnesota Cities puts out a guide to special assessments. A resolution ordering the improvements may be adopted anytime within 6 months after the date of the improvement hearing. This resolution may reduce but not increase the extent of the improvement as stated in the notice of hearing. So that's what we're doing right now, no matter what we decide. This is reducing, we've had the hearing, we're reducing
Yep.
the amount that
Yep,
was
because we started at
initially published.
3.2 million,
Yep.
and now we're down to 2.8, yep. Okay, Brian, you keep looking. Council,
Yeah,
talk
I'm
to me.
sorry.
Talk to me. What do you want to do?
Which, I thought it was really good at the planning, that they did some, I didn't expect that much, so I like it, what you guys did on the planning. I respect you for it, so, and I know sometimes it isn't what it is, but it's, we have to do something, you know, but what you guys did was, I liked it.
And I'm sure that some of you have been approached by people from like the downtown committee and that kind of stuff saying, we put in all this effort to create this and now you're cutting it away. When you have that conversation, I think they ultimately agree that we're still improving it. We're still adding a whole lot more amenities than we've ever had before. So is it less? Yes. Was it a hard decision to carve it back and create the less? Yes. But I still think we're making a dramatic improvement based on what we have right now regarding the gateway.
And whatever decision we make is setting precedent for the Main Street project.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, both with the amount of the amenities and with the assessment piece of
Yep.
it. So,
Yep. So what else?
So, Brian, I guess my next thing is the winter commons. When we gotta move that street straight and we gotta dig into Main Street for infrastructure. And I know you didn't count that in this project for that infrastructure. That's going to go into the commons project to restructure those lines.
You're just talking on Second?
Yes.
No, those costs are not as part of this.
That's not going to affect the Red River project.
No, the Red River project, we were just gonna tie into the existing sewer lines at the right of way.
Okay.
And the street will probably get reconfigured, although the county had looked at reconfiguring the street. At this point, we were going to leave the utilities where they are, which means they might be a little outside of the street, but there's a number of things in there that make it difficult to do the utilities, number one, bedrock.
My concern was mostly like, we don't have to disturb that because we televised it, we don't have to disturb that. Now, the scenario would be is when the commons and we do that street, now it's going to get disturbed, you know. My is, where is that going to affect? Is that going to affect? Somehow the city is going to have to do something with the commons thing because on Fifth Avenue, we've got to put some in. So what the question I'm going to be asked is, they're going like, now do we got to pay for that too? You know,
The
well,
Fifth
the city
Avenue,
assessment will have in another way.
yeah, the Fifth Avenue portion is a developer. We're saying you can tie into our street, you can tie into our utilities, but we're not. It's considered a private line to that point. On Second, where it ties into Red River, like I said, we just planned on going up to the right of way, not going anything further up with the utilities. The road will get reconfigured a little, but nothing with utilities.
Okay, Dave? Jamie? So, okay, did you find your answer?
Yeah, I read through again, I didn't find anything additional, I think. It
Okay,
talks
so as
about-
long as we keep cutting it down, we're still okay. So if tonight we tell you that go with the streetscape portion, or the special assessment, the 429 portion, at the higher number, 890, I think it is, if we say go with that, but then we want you to put that numbers on the two different scenarios on the website so people can access it, and then on the 13th, we're gonna make a final decision. You're okay with that?
I don't think we would, Chris, would we? The only thing I'm thinking of is I don't know when you order the improvements, does that mean you're looking to assess at the way that was noted in the feasibility? Unless you say otherwise, but we haven't said otherwise.
Which is what I was trying to suggest earlier, is maybe you need to just vote on one of these scenarios, and it sounds like you're probably thinking the 65-35. And then you can reduce it later, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think when we come to the final assessment, these are just preliminary. When we come to the final, if we decide to reduce it, I think you would be okay.
I do too.
Because there could be other things in the construction cost, it could either raise it or lower it too, right?
Right, and yeah, because the final, this preliminary, the assessment we send to an individual property owner is no guarantee of what the final assessment will be.
Okay.
I think it would be better to vote on one, as Brian is saying, and then you can always
So can I throw it out there one more time and try to paraphrase one more time? If I understood what you said, 429, the state code saying that if you're gonna bond for this, says we have to bond for, or we have to special assess at least 20%. In addition to that, the law says that as long as we keep cutting, we can change numbers, but we can never increase anymore. So we started at 3.2 million, we're now down to 2.8 million. That's a cut, we can do that. If we assessed 890,000, and that's the choice we make tonight, on the 13th or the next meeting after that, we can cut it further, but we can never go above 890.
It's a legal question, and I'm not sure that.
Well, I think and again, it is a legal question, but it's a question I think we need to have an answer to before I'm comfortable asking the council to make a decision on it. Because again, if you're gonna tie our hands, I wanna know under what circumstances you're gonna tie our hands.
I apologize, I don't have necessarily the legal advice that the city attorney would have as it relates to this. I guess if we're uncomfortable with the legal aspect of it, I would say we're better off waiting.
Council, are you willing to wait? Because I am.
I'm willing to wait.
Fran, you willing to wait?
Yes.
Dave? Jen?
I'd rather
I
get it
guess-
done and over with.
I guess I'd rather get it done and over with too yet, and I think the planning commission, all their work that they did, made a recommendation at a 65-35 split. Both. I guess I'd feel comfortable voting on it tonight.
My issue is that, again, I just want to be able to make sure that we have enough information and that the public has had a chance to see it before we made a decision. If
Because the decision we made, that's it.
that's it, that's what I'm afraid, and again, I'm asking, can we change our mind later? And you can,
No, we can't.
and neither of these people, and I understand they're not attorneys, neither of these people can tell us that we have the right to change our mind.
And if we made the wrong decision, then we have to live with it.
We have to live with it. And like I said, at this moment, I'm not comfortable with that. So if somebody wants to make a motion, we can vote on this thing. Otherwise, my suggestion is we just put this one back on the agenda for the 13th.
It's a lot of money.
And it's gonna be a lot of money no matter what. And to Dave, to your point, I appreciate what the planning commission did, and we ultimately may very well take their position. It's just that until we know, I wanna know that we have options, we have choices for as long as we have options and choices. And I'd like to have people have a chance to see it.
How often are we gonna change this then? I mean, we're
We
gonna
get one more-
change
we
it
get
that
one more try.
we're gonna do this on the 13th, and then we find out, oh, we can change it again, and we're gonna keep on changing it, or what are we gotta come up with something at some point, what we're gonna do.
Okay, what would you propose? Because I'm saying that we decided on the 13th. What would you propose?
I'm going by whatever decision we're going to have to live with it. Planning Commission, again, we reduced a lot of costs, and I have to say that there was more there. But with the assessments now, the planning and stuff, I am still going to go with call a friend.
You want to call a friend? This is not that show. This is a different show. But I agree with you. For right now, to Dave's point, how many times are we going to keep putting this off? How often will we kick this can down the road? My answer to that is one. We're going to make the decision on the 13th. Now, if you want to do something other than that, again, there's 5 votes here, and I just expressed one opinion. So if you want to do something different, let's do that. But otherwise, if you don't have a better plan, a different plan, then my recommendation is let's just move on to the next issue on the agenda, because let's move this until the 13th. In the meantime, let's get some answers.
Before we move on, let's at least do what the streetscaping, that recommendation, so that they
For the
can have
reduction
that.
of the,
So they can have that. If we can do that, okay, here, do all of this, and then we'll leave the percentage for next time. But the rest of this, we almost have to vote on, right? So you can have that.
The
We
re-
can't,
I can't
we
start
can't
design
because we
until
have to give him an assessment.
council has to order the improvements before I can start the design.
Yeah.
Um,
And
It
that's
would, it would probably be good if the council can be in agreement in general agreement on the planning commission recommendations, because then I can prepare something for the website, but we can't start work until
Okay.
there's a final decision from the council.
So none of this can be voted on tonight then?
No,
Unless we come up with using the scenario was $890,000. Again, the same, what I heard is we can always go down, but we can't go up. So,
That's what I asked, you said you don't know, and I
That's-
think you said, I don't know.
That's how I'm reading the league's recommendation, but because I'm not an attorney, I don't wanna make
yeah,
a judgment based on the league's document that
So-
ultimately would get us in trouble.
so we would actually need it.
I want so much to get this done, but it doesn't sound like we're gonna get it voted on anyway, so we might as well move on then.
Well, I have a question. Is the only thing, I'm basically asking the same question Dave just said. Is the only thing left in debate the 65-35 versus 80-20?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
A or B.
You're definitely okay on the streetscape changes, right? Maybe
Oh,
we
wait, is everyone okay
Yes,
with this?
absolutely.
Everyone's okay? Okay, yes.
Then I guess I would go with what Dave said and vote on it, and we make a call tomorrow to an attorney, and we say, can we order the plans and specs based on that? If the answer's no, we're back here on the 13th to finish that decision, and if the answer's yes, then at least we've got, like Dave said, that part is done.
Okay, but can we undo, if we say this is what we're gonna do, and we vote on it, and that's what we say we're gonna do, and then the attorney says, well, no, you can't change your mind, you're stuck with that, but now we wanna change our mind, and that's,
Well, the only thing I'm asking you to vote on is the streetscape changes,
Not the percentage.
not the percentages, and then to approve this resolution ordering the plans and specs.
Okay,
And if you look at the
that-
resolution, it doesn't mention anything about scenarios.
okay, but I'm sorry, but I thought that's what I asked earlier if we could do, and I thought I heard earlier that that's what we could not do.
I'm not sure if the assessment percentages are tied to the ordering of the improvements or not. That would be the question I would have for the attorney.
We aren't sure.
We are
If,
not sure.
if we find out that
about
the
this,
assessment
but we're
percentages
sure about
are
that,
tied to
but
it,
He won't tie them singly up to you.
If he's
He
not-
needs both.
Okay, and again, if we.
He needs this and he needs that.
Okay, but again, what I'm saying is if we can't get some level of comfort, some level of assurance that says that the reason that the numbers are 890 and 835, the reason that those numbers are different has to do with the formula that was used, the 80-20 and the 65-35. If we later want to change our mind and we don't want to use the 80-20, but rather we want to use the 65-35, if we can't change the 890 number down to 835, if we can't make that number, what we've just done tonight is we have voted, by default, we have voted on this. And what I'm saying is, if that's not what we intend to do, then I don't want this council to do it.
Would the 80-20 be more closer to 73-27 because we have to put that cushion in? It's not gonna be 20, we know that. It's gonna be 25, 26, 27.
It's only the
So-
overall project that they look at. It's not individual categories.
Okay,
That
It's
80-20
the
isn't
overall
the 20,
project.
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
That you have to assess the 20%. Okay.
So can I ask, under what scenario would we not want 65-35 versus 80-20?
Well, the 80-20, and again, planning commission, help me with this one. My understanding is the 80-20 is only on the commercial properties in the downtown district. Everything else is 60, so basically outside of First Street North and First Street South, outside of those areas, everything is the same.
No. 80-20 or 65-35 on the streetscape items only is including the downtown, but it also goes down to 23.
Okay.
So it's from 23 to First Street North.
Commercial properties.
Commercial properties only. There's only
Okay.
two houses, so pretty much, for all intents and purposes, it's everybody from 23 First Street North.
Okay.
Take out
So-
two houses and that's it.
Okay, then let's listen to what I say one more time and make sure I say it right this time. So the difference between those two is who pays more of the special assessment? Does the commercial property from First Street North, south to Highway 23, pay a larger percentage or not?
Of the streetscaping items that are not including lights and the gateway elements.
Right,
Yes,
that's the question,
yes.
okay? And maybe if, now that we're phrasing it that way, is the council comfortable with deciding that? I'm still not comfortable with this.
I have an idea. Actually, it was Lois's idea. You have a meeting next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Yep.
Could I check on it between now and then and vote on it next Tuesday?
Can you still put it on that agenda? Because I thought we
Yes.
had to include it on an agenda in order
We
to
do,
get it
and
voted.
we have to post that 4 days ahead of time, so
So we
I
can still do it?
have enough time to
Okay,
do that.
are you okay with that? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
So next Tuesday, we'll make this final decision.
Yeah.
Between then and now, we'll get an interpretation and we'll get the information on the website.
My vote would be the same today or next week, so.
Yep, mine is too.
Okay? And mine very well may be as well. But I want to know, again, this is a big deal. I want to know. So you okay putting it off for one?
You wanna know what?
Huh?
You wanna know what?
Again, the question that I have still goes back to, if we tonight say 890 versus 835, 6535 versus 8020, if we make that decision tonight, post the information and then say, that's not what we intended for tonight. For tonight, we intended to just give Brian the go-ahead to get started with the plans. Can we change our mind later?
Only if it's less.
Only if it's less, but Brian's not even sure we can ever do it.
What would
But
change?
if we're all at the position that we're saying we wanna use our standard 65-35 assessment policy,
65-35, and we're not
and
gonna
not
change
vary,
our mind. Why are we?
why would we rehash
would
it
we-
again?
Yeah. Why would we change our mind?
Okay?
I guess is what I'm.
Okay, then let me ask you
I'm
this,
getting
then if you're convinced that we're ready to move on, then why doesn't somebody make a motion to that effect? And then we'll get a motion in a second, and then we'll vote on it and see if we're ready to go ahead with that.
I'll make the motion to move forward with the reconstruction project with the reduction as proposed by the planning commission and using the assessment policy of the city at the 65-35.
And this here one right here,
Yeah.
correct?
And Jan, could I ask you to include the approval of resolution
Yes, the approval of resolution 2015-13.
And I will second that.
Okay, so Jan made the motion and Dave seconded the motion. Discussion.
So we're gonna go 65-35 on
Yep,
the street.
on everything.
On everything.
Yep, and we're going to special assess $890,000. And we believe that if we decided that we wanted to go 80-20, we believe we might have a chance to do that later if that's what we chose. But otherwise, this is what we're doing.
And it would be, if I can clarify, 65-35 on the streetlights, on all the remaining streetscape items, or as it's presented, streetlights on, as it's presented there,
As it's here.
streetlights on every one, the remaining items from First Street North to 23, and the gateway items 100% city.
Correct.
Like I said, as you have it, that's what you intended, right, Jan?
That is
That's
correct.
what you intended, right, Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any more discussion?
And then,
Yeah.
and then that's going to bring the tax value up in $102 for each house instead of 100,
Instead of the 106.
instead of 106, it's going to,
102 instead of 106.
instead of 106, what's it, the difference will be.
Correct.
And the other difference will be is why we didn't choose 838 is because of the 80-20 split.
Correct.
All right. So we don't want the commercial people to pay, everybody to pay the same, correct? Is that what we want? To clarify for me?
Brian?
On 65-35, everybody is going to pay the same,
We're not gonna make an exception
We're
for the
not gonna-
commercial to have them
that's
pay
right.
less.
to pay less. But on an 80-20 split, that would mean the commercial people would pay more.
Less.
Less.
20%.
All right? So, so they would pay less to commercial people, correct? And they have the most use out of it, or the value of it, out of this streetscaping, correct?
It's a theory. We all benefit from it.
Yeah.
But the businesses, because they're businesses, in a theoretical world, would have more intrinsic value, more benefit from it.
Okay?
Do you have any more questions?
No?
David, do you have any more questions?
No.
Okay, Brian, what do you got?
I do want to point out that there is a super majority required for adoption of these improvements.
That means at least 4 out of the 5 of us have to agree to the motion.
Correct.
Okay? Thank you. Dave, any questions, concerns? Yeah? All right, then we're gonna call the question. There's a motion and a second on the table. We're going to go ahead with approving tonight the resolution 2015-13 and as presented, the 65-35 split, which includes the special assessment of $890,000 based on this projection. That's what we're voting on. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Abstentions? All right, motion passes 4-1. And thank you very much for this discussion. I appreciate it very much. And Planning Commission, again, thank you for what you did for us. We do appreciate it. All right. Brian, you now have what you need so you can keep moving on the project?
Correct.
Okay, but can you still get the information onto the website so people can still see what it is that we just agreed to? Thank you. All right. Then council, if you're okay with it, I believe we're done with item number 7. Oh, Brian, are we done with item number 7?
I believe so.
Excellent. Then let's talk about, you don't have to talk about 8 years. Item number 8 on the agenda, a housing study. At the last, several times now, we've talked about going ahead with a housing study. At a budget meeting, we talked about funding a budget study. Do we still want to go ahead and keep moving on it? Or should we wait and let the EDA have their discussions with the potential developer and then based on that information, decide whether we want to spend the $15,000 for the housing study?
Are we basing that housing study just for the department, or are we going to discuss the housing study for everybody that would come to the city of Cold Spring? I mean, are we just doing this for the apartment thing, or are we doing this as for the whole city?
It would be a whole,
It would be a whole, so the initial discussion was to find out not what we needed, but maybe what we don't need.
Because that's
So
how
there's
what started was the housing, was whether it was feasible for them to do it. And should we go on with the housing because will it affect our forfeiture properties and stuff? You know, that's the other thing being on the EDA and with you, Jamie, on the EDA is like, okay, go on with the housing study is, will that help us sell our forfeiture properties? If that would help that, then yeah, I would say keep going.
I think it's a question that I think we should put that to EDA, let that group decide.
All right.
And the reason I say it is because we've got a number of things we're going to try with that, and I know that when we presented the Blue Heron lots for the apartments, he said it was just the layout of that land just wouldn't work for what they want to do for how they build their stuff. So
Okay.
I think we just let the housing study run with the EDA and
Yeah,
see.
my thing was I was thinking if we're just doing the housing study for the apartment people, we shouldn't be doing it just for them. We should be doing it for the whole city.
So what should we do? Should we just, for now, table it and let the EDA keep going?
I would say like
Yeah.
Jamie.
Jamie,
says.
Dave, you okay with that?
Yes, I agree.
All right, Jen?
yep, I agree.
All right, we're moving on to item number 9. Item number 9 on the agenda, adopt proposed 2016 preliminary levy. That's resolution 2015-19. Chris, if you would please read that aloud.
Okay, recommendation is to adopt resolution 2015-19, a resolution adopting the preliminary 2016 tax levy collectible in 2016. I made the changes that you asked me to after we had the budget meeting, and nothing else has changed, and I updated this sheet as, and everything is exactly the same. The increase in the levy rate would be less than 1%, 0.97%.
Okay. Jamie, would you be ready? What I was gonna ask you is this. As part of this budget process, what we did is, we said, how well are we doing this? How well do we budget? How well do we constrain our spending? How well do we handle our money? So what I asked is if Jamie and Chris would work together and look at the last 5 years and take a look and see how well did we budget versus how well did we spend our money. And what they found I thought was rather interesting. And so I asked them, they made this presentation to the council at our budget meeting last week, but I asked them if they would do it again so that the community could see it, because this I thought was pretty enlightening. So would you please?
I didn't bring anything with me because I didn't see myself on the agenda, so I apologize. I had the printouts, but I didn't bring them with me.
Okay, excellent.
Or the PDFs that I had.
Okay.
Because I didn't see me on the agenda, so I apologize. I didn't think I was going to have to present that. But what we found out was that over the course of the years, we're within 2%, plus or minus 2% of what we levy to what our revenues are. So it's not that we're going over on different things. It's those things that we can control: salaries, expenses.
Yeah, this?
No, that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
So, the amount needed to budget, to balance the budget, 93,000?
Okay, Brad, if I can ask you to just hang on to that for 1 second.
yeah,
Because
okay.
first I want the community to understand that the process that we've gone through, and I think that's what Jamie and Chris are gonna talk about, the process that we go through is actually working for the city of Cold Spring. So after we talk about what we've done, then we'll talk about moving forward. So again, please.
So what we found out was that there's basically 5 major departments that consume about 94% of our annual budget. Police department, fire department being the major ones of that. And the remainder of the 6% is smaller departments that we have. Within that, there's some volatility that happens. That departments that have larger budgets have less degree of volatility in what they spend or what they generate. The smaller departments with the smaller budgets have a higher degree of volatility. So when you look at the graph, which I'm assuming we'll post with all this stuff, when you look at that graph, you'll see that volatility that happens when you have that shift in there. What we did next then was look at all the departments year over year and how they change. And year over year, like I said, we're within plus or minus 2 million. And again, those top 5 departments I was talking about consume 96% or $2 million of our expenditures. That's where that chunk of that's coming from. So there's that less volatility in those, because as they change, 10% of 100,000 is 10,000. 10% of 1,000 is 100. So when you look at the number in a percentage wise, there's 2 varying degrees of actual dollars that we had to look at on that. And then the last part of that was we just ran a number for general expenditures versus revenue dollars, and in that case we're plus or minus 1%. And again, that goes back to having that tight control over the expenses that we know we're going to have. We know how much fuel we're going to use. We know what our supplies are. We know what training the police department's going to have. We know what salaries and equipment are. We budget for all that kind of stuff. So overall, we do a very good job. Very good job of it. So.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for not giving you the advanced warning to be ready. He actually does have slides, so you can see it, and they're in color and everything. But again, the point that I want to reemphasize is what they have found is that over the years, consistently, was it 94% of our budgetary expenditures that were within 1 or 2% of spending what we think we're going to spend. The city is doing a good job of looking and controlling the budget. So I wanted to have that piece of it out up front first. Now, let's talk about 2016's budget going forward. Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have this in front. So what we came up with is the amount needed to balance the budget for 2016. We need $94 more thousand, correct? Is this what I understand?
Yes, we needed 93,833 more than we needed
Last
in
year.
2015. Yep.
And that was due to the cost of doing business. It didn't have anything to do with anything else. That was the cost, that's the additional cost for doing business.
Yep, operating expenses.
Okay. And that would be like if the fuel, the salt, and whoever we had done, the cost just goes up.
And there's capital purchases in there too. Yep.
Bond payments, all of that.
Well, not in that top, he's looking at that very top line,
Oh,
the bottom section there, that's just the general fund levy. It is things like fuel and all those ongoing costs, but it's also, major purchases,
Yes.
be it a snowplow, squad car, server.
Is the forfeiture property and our forfeiture property and our business part, is this part of the effect of this $93,000? Is this affecting that or it isn't?
No, all of those levies stayed the same from last year to this year.
Okay.
So it's just the general fund levy that went up.
So on the budget, the coming year budget, did we get some monies for, we were talking about doing some changes within the structure of the city, that would be city hall, library. That wasn't even included on this budget, the budget some money for that.
We did budget,
I think we budgeted
Was it
$10,000
for a study?
to study to find out how we could remodel to make this building work for the departments that currently occupy it.
Okay.
We didn't budget for the actual construction.
Correct.
But for the study.
Right.
Yeah,
to determine.
because in the coming year, that's still haunting us is, the library, correct?
Yep,
Because that's still, we don't know
yep.
where this is at, all right? And to budget some money to do this, we didn't do that, right?
We budgeted some money to make a determination of how we can use this space. Again, one of the things that you have mentioned several times and that we have supported you in is that the fire department in this location, it seems to be a really good fit. Now, they have some issues with backing in off of a busy street during traffic. I mean, I understand that there are some issues, but assuming we can work with it, this is an ideal location for an awful lot of things. So is it possible to use this building, which we already own, remodel the building, add on if we need to? Is it possible to make this a new home for what we're doing? And for that, we budgeted enough to do a study. Now, we didn't approve remodeling or spending money. All we said is, let's budget enough money to do that, and then it's gonna go back to planning for them to figure out who's gonna do the study, what are the parameters, and when they know that, then we'll approve the expenditure of those dollars. But in this 97 or 93,000, yes, there is an amount for that study.
Because on the other hand is, we levied in the last 3 years, we levied a lot of taxes, on, and I thought maybe 2016 we were going to have a little relief and go on, but we still need $94,000 to do business. Is what we need. Okay.
And again, please, just to restate that, the fuel costs we projected were going to continue to drop as they have. So fuel costs citywide are down, but wages go up every year. Health insurance goes up. Other insurances have gone up. Different things have gone up. The net result on a $2 million budget, the net result, we needed $93,000 more in 16 than we did in 15.
And Chris, you said that was .1, what was that going to?
0.97%.
0.97%. Okay.
Other questions?
That's in the tax rate.
That's actually in that's the percentage increase of the levy. So the tax rate itself, how much?
Well, that's the increase in the levied amount.
Okay, sorry, you better do.
Can I, last year's levy rate was 0.4425, and this year's estimated levy rate is 0.4468.
Okay, so it is an increase
Of point,
0.97 in the rate.
yes.
What is the increase in percentage in the amount being levied?
In the amount,
94,000.
That's the 90.
8.16%.
Thank you. We went through this last year, the
Yep.
difference between the
Yep.
2%.
Yep. So,
But about can I just add one more thing?
Please.
But because our tax capacity went up,
Yep.
that 8.16% increase in a levy equates to less than 1% in tax rate. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Okay.
I just want to clarify that there's two different things.
Yep.
very much.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. All right. So we're still working on approving, we're on item number 9, approving the 2015 proposed levy increase. Any other questions from the council with regards to that? If not,
Just a point of clarification on this too, when we
Okay.
approve this preliminary levy, the final levy can only go down from here.
Correct.
So,
Yep, thank you for that, and that is true. Again, please, there are some things that could happen, that may make a difference in a bunch of these things, but as of right now, this is what our proposal is, and we have to get this to the county by
September 30th.
September 30th. So we do have to act on this one tonight. So, anybody want to make a motion to approve or disapprove?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Dave, thank you. So Jamie motioned and Dave second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we're on item number 10. Discuss presentation to the EDA by SunShare Community Solar. And Dan Style, would you please have a chair and talk with us?
Well, let me start by saying I am not a solar energy expert. So all I did was gather information from a number of sources. So I can go as detailed as you want, or I can go as general as you want. It's basically up to you.
Let's start general and go from there.
All right. Well, the real question is how is the profit being made in this transaction? And I think that's what I focused on. What's happening is that solar production companies are receiving some benefits from both the state and the federal government on this program. And that's why you see so many applications coming through from these companies. One of the companies we looked at is SunShare. They have 89 applications at the state level. There are over 1,000 applications that the state is now dealing with solar energy. So it's a hot item, and it's definitely in the forefront of a lot of companies that are looking at this. So I think when you look at solar energy, there's some things that you have to know. The first thing is that there is a 30% federal tax credit on these companies developing solar energy. So companies are in a hurry to do this. They have until December 31st, 2016 to comply with some of the state mandates. Okay. Minnesota has a credit program of 2 cents per kilowatt hour that they're willing to give these providers, which is Xcel Energy, etc., a reduction in their expense in order to do this. As I said, there are a number of proposals coming through. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the exact comments that I did on how you make money on this.
How we make money on this?
No, you're not gonna make money on this.
We're just gonna save some, a little bit.
30 years though.
Well, we won't spend as much over the next 30 years.
Yeah, here's how you make money on the development of solar gardens. First off, you make it from the sale of equipment. Then you make it on the build out of the project. And then you make it on selling the project to a developer. And you sell it to a finance company that can capture 30% of this tax incentives. They also can capture accelerated depreciation, which is another 10%. So a company that is doing this can generate 40% in tax savings. The finance company negotiates the best price scenarios with the energy companies, which is Xcel or Minnesota Power. So what it means to the city is there are some savings to the city if the city is interested in signing a long-term 25-year agreement with an energy company or a developer. We looked at 2 companies. One was SolarShare, which presented to the EDA, and the second company is 10K, which you heard a few months ago. So I think basically the city can lower its tax. Lower its energy cost by entering into this agreement, but the risk is in the numbers that the that the developer uses. Most of them have a break even inside of them. The break even is 2.5%. So if the Xcel Energy raises their rate more than 2.5% a year, it's going to be beneficial to any residential, commercial, or municipality that purchases these contracts. If the rate is below 2.5%, which is a break even, that is the risk that the city is taking. So both 10K Solar and SunShare are using a 2.5 to 3.5 rate increase per year in their projections. So what's happening in our area, if we just talk specifically about SolarShare, SolarShare has a 15-acre solar garden on Greystone Road. If you go down Greystone Road in Wakefield Township, you take a little corner bend, there's some trees. There's the 15-acre site that SolarShare has already locked up with the property owner. It's going to be a 15-acre site, And it's projected to start construction in 2016. So the land is finalized. The next meeting is September 25th, 2015, with all these players in the project. The state now has a 1 megawatt cap on a project, but SolarShare has entered into an agreement prior to the state setting its cap. So this is a 3 megawatt. What they are projecting the city of Cold Spring to do is to enter into 1.125 megawatt contract, which then binds the city to that contract for 25 years. There are some definite benefits. The benefits are in reducing your energy costs. When Paul Hessian was here, he talked with 10K, which you guys heard, and what they were looking at is that sewage treatment plant only. It was a 1 megawatt project to lock in, cap the energy costs on the sewer treatment plant with a maximum of a 2.5% increase every year. For anyone that would rent or sell land or lease land to these companies, the payback is $500 to $1,000 per acre per year. So the site in Wakefield Township can generate, $7,500 to $15,000 a year on that project. You're going to see a savings in your electrical bill. The trends of Excel rate continue to increase. So the city is creating a safety net. That's basically what you're doing, and you're saying that we believe that Xcel Energy is going to raise their rates more than that break even per year. So therefore, we will see an increased savings in our electrical costs. So you have a savings in your rates. You create a safety net for your community. You're recognized as a leader in environmental issues. It's public relations. SolarShare promotes anchor tenants, such as the city if you were to join, and you have the ability to move to bigger projects. So if you said, okay, we did a 1 megawatt, now the regulations have changed in the state of Minnesota, we'd like to go to a 3 megawatt, you would have that ability to do that. The state is requiring Xcel Energy to develop alternative energies, and that's where this all comes from. It's 1.5% of all of our energy has to come from renewable energy by the year 2020. So this is what Xcel is doing to achieve this goal. The idea is to make solar accessible for all Minnesotans, and SolarShare is one of those companies that does that. So SolarShare is moving into that realm of development. Xcel Energy is giving them that 2 cent a kilowatt savings, plus whoever does this gets about a 40% state and federal tax credit, which makes it extremely beneficial to those companies. Also, a company like Minnesota Power, which 10K works with, expects an 8 to 9% return over the life of that contract. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses. The pluses is the city does not have to spend any upfront money. The city can tie its electrical rates into a contract that, based on what the past Xcel Energy increases have been, is going to be beneficial to the city of Cold Spring. If it exceeds 2.5%, the city of Cold Spring is going to see increased benefits in that contract through savings. One of the questions is, okay, 10K or SolarShare, okay, they develop this project and they go bankrupt in 2 years. They're just gone. Well, Solar Share is a minor player in this, and so is 10K. They may develop the project, but the finance company is the one that controls all the strings in this thing. And the finance company for 10K is Minnesota Power. The finance company for for Solar Share is NRG, which is the wholesale arm of Xcel Energy. So if SunShare or 10K files bankruptcy in a couple of years, you've got major players behind you that are going to step in and make sure that that project continues as it was originally contracted.
So just a quick question, Dan. So if we, say you're a subscriber, so we subscribe to 1 megawatt
Okay?
or whatever.
Yep.
Do we get billed from them monthly by our usage or strictly by the 1 megawatt whether we use it or don't use it?
By your usage. So we're all familiar with Xcel Energy bills. Xcel Energy would have another line on there and it would say credit. Your credit is the difference between their charge and the charge of SunShare. Then SunShare is going to turn around and bill you for that energy usage. So SunShare actually owns the solar power and gets a rebate from Xcel Energy, turns around and bills you. So you're going to have two statements. One's Xcel's with a credit. The other one is SunShare with their debit or their charge.
But as a general rule, if I understood it correctly, we're basically paying the same amount for electricity then as we are now, unless the rates continue to increase, because we're locked in to what our rate is. So there is the downside risk isn't all that great.
I'm sorry, the downside risk is what?
Isn't that great? Our utility bills basically are going to stay what they are right now unless rates go up. If rates go up, our utility bills basically stay what they are as well. But
Right.
we're not going to be paying a whole lot more.
Both SunShare and 10K have built-in accelerator clauses in that contract. And I think the information that you have shows a 1.125 and 1.175. Those are accelerator clauses that they can increase your bill every year. So the risk is that Xcel Energy accelerates the charges less than what your accelerator rates are in SunShare. So if Xcel increases more, the cost savings that you've got just increase.
Okay. Council, questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I was part of the.
Okay. Dave?
I don't have any.
Okay. Dan? Dan? What, do we want to go ahead and do something about this now, or do we want to put it as an agenda item for the 13th and make it, and vote in favor of it then? And then how we're going to deal with it at that point? Or do we want to just deal with it now? What do you want to do? Dan?
Can I make a recommendation?
If you would.
I'm not an expert at this. My recommendation would be that we all learn together, and there's a number of more experienced individuals that should come to you and make their pitch before you would take my word for it and make a recommendation. So to me, this is more of a long-term than a short-term solution, because you're making a decision that's going to last 25 years. So I would invite these companies and maybe a solar energy expert in and give it a presentation, and you guys can make your decision as to which way you'd want to go. If you don't want to go at all.
Do we have information on where they have any of these other farms already up and running and in place? That other
Yes.
municipalities are using? Or
Yes.
participating in?
Yeah.
Heidi,
Tacona,
you guys have the one up there. Isn't there another one started south of town too yet?
do you know what company that is?
I believe that is Solar Share.
Solar Share is south of company, Solar Share is north. Solar Share is the one on Greystone Road.
That's Sunshare.
That's Sunshine.
So there's Solar Share, Sun Share.
10K.
I'm sorry, Sunshare.
10K.
Yep. Excuse me.
Sunshare's got the sign outside of town, right? On the billboard?
Yes.
Isn't there one on the billboard? Okay.
Yeah, and then there's another company that's called Stone Share, Stone Sun. So there's many companies that are coming into this area. And again, the reason they're coming into this area is there's some profit to be made here. And you can see that. You can see when you've got a 40% tax differential back to whoever purchases these solar energy projects, you can see why they're interested in that.
Yeah, because I'm curious how they're going to meter that. You know, how are they going to meter that? Some of the electricity goes this way and some of it goes this way.
It all has to be sold back into the grid. The grid is Xcel Energy or the grid is Stearns Electric.
That's how it's-
It all is regulated by the state of Minnesota. And again, they were mandated to do this. So they're
They're
going
looking
ahead.
for partners, right? Sunshare's looking for partners in it, like the city and maybe
Yeah,
some other-
absolutely. Sunshare is going to open it up to municipalities. They would like to get 50% commercial and 50% residential. So if I live in Wakefield Township, I could actually buy as
They
much as I
already
wanted
approached
to.
me for my business.
Pardon?
They have approached me for
Yeah.
my business if I wanted to get on that.
Yeah. So the real thing to look at is not who's doing it or all of the maintenance items. It's what does this contract look like, and can I drive a lower initial rate down? So if I can do different accelerator rates, lower accelerator rates, or I can get a lower minimum percentage increase, that's where the real savings come in. So it's the city of Cold Spring negotiating a contract with SunShare, SolarShare, or 10K. The stronger your contract is, the more you're going to protect yourself, and the more you're going to be able to cut your energy cost.
And
So-
what was explained to me was the technology is growing, keeps going in this solar energy so fast that in 2 years, the equipment could be out of date with some other replacement equipment.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. The state of Minnesota has a window here. The window is December 31st, 2016. We will give you this cost savings back. After that, the window closes, and it's gonna go back to what other states do, or other country, or other municipalities and units around the country do. Minnesota has a credit program, again, of 2 cents per kilowatt. The average in the United States is 0.10 cent. So it's so much lower than the state of Minnesota. And that's why these companies are really looking at expansion. The 10K Solar, it has 200 sites already completed in Minnesota. The biggest is a 1 megawatt unit. There are units in Monticello. The last one that 10K did was a 25 megawatt system for Dairyland in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So yeah, you can see that these are being built. Dakota County has put a moratorium on gardens. Wright County has applications to build 177 solar sites. And the other side of this is the idea that the city of Cold Spring, and you will hear this in presentations from them, the city of Cold Spring has 3 acres down by the wastewater treatment plant. It can never use that property because the wastewater treatment plant might need that sooner or later. So you could actually sign a 20-year contract with one of these companies, and they will come in and build a solar site down by the wastewater treatment plant, and you would receive X amount of rent on that site each year. So some of the other things that you could do is look at your city and say, we have some land here that will never be developed, is not good for development, is low land or whatever. We are going to bring a company in here to develop solar power, and you would receive the income from the rent off of that project. So the companies that I've dealt with were SunShare, and then I've dealt with 10K, and I also have an individual that works for economic development in municipalities that said he's a real expert on this. So it would just be interesting to learn more about solar power. But I know there's a lot of companies that are certainly looking at this. St. Joseph is looking at it. St. Cloud is looking at it. Other companies have already signed contracts with them.
And we, the city of Cold Spring, have been looking at it for some time too, and I think that's a great idea, but I think your idea of getting in a third-party expert that doesn't give us a sales pitch, but rather gives us information, I think would be very valuable. Would you be willing to try to work with Chris to align something like that at one of our next meetings so we can get somebody in here that'll give us real straight information? Council, okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Dan, thank you.
Stan.
I don't know enough about them.
Item number 11 on the agenda, acceptance of an Ag Star grant.
It's Dan.
That's Dan.
Dan's gonna talk about it.
Come sit next to me, though.
You're on your own, big guy. Tell us what we need to know.
Way to go, huh? About 2 weeks ago, something like that, I applied for a grant. Sent out for a grant through Ag Star. Yesterday, we received a letter in the mail that we are awarded $3,000 to help purchase some bunker gear for our fire department. So.
Can you tell us what that grant means?
It means less money that we have to take out of donations or money that's been budgeted through our fire department for equipment. So this will help pay for some new firefighter gear. So it benefits the city and the townships.
Have you ever gotten grants through them before?
No.
A new source.
Well, yeah, I think Chain Lakes might have got one last year. I think every other year.
We get one every other year.
Yeah. So last year I sent one in and got rejected on it. So.
Excellent. So we can, anytime in the next year, you can go out and buy your gear and they'll give us $3,000
No, it's
to help
got to be
defer.
purchased before the end of this year.
Before the end of this year.
Yep.
So before the end of this year, we go out and buy the equipment that we were going to buy anyway, but they help defer some of the cost
Yes.
of purchasing it.
Yep.
Okay? Council, questions?
Congratulations.
Nice job.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job.
Absolutely.
Anything to help out the city and the townships and the taxpayers.
So Chris has something she wants to read.
Yeah, I'd love to. Acceptance of Egg Star grant. Recommendation to accept a $3,000 grant from Egg Star Financial Services for fire department turnout gear according to the terms of the grant agreement.
Council, any questions about that? Otherwise, we need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
Fran, thank you. Second?
Second.
Jamie, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Dan, what else you got for us?
October 7th, it's the first Wednesday of October. We have open house at the fire hall for fire prevention. We will be at the fire hall at 6 PM that night. And people can come in and tour their trucks. We do it every other year. I think 2 years ago, we had about 300 people there, so it was a great turnout, and of juice and helmets for the kids, little plastic helmets, and then we'll be giving out batteries a couple batteries to each household, and that comes and put in their fire for their smoke detectors. So October 7th, first Wednesday.
First Wednesday, October 7th, and where is it gonna be?
At the Cold Spring Fire Hall.
Will they be able to figure out how to get to it?
It's on Red River South, 27 Red River South, just around the corner.
Excellent. On October 7th?
Yep.
What time?
6 PM.
6 PM. And about how long will it last?
Till everybody's gone. Usually it's about an hour and a half or so. People come in, tour around, and
Okay, so October 7th,
Yep.
Wednesday,
yep.
open house.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else?
No. I'm good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Item number 12 on the agenda. Chris?
Request by the Church of Saints Peter and Paul for off-site gambling permit, and you have a resolution that you got tonight about this, number 2015-21. Recommendation to adopt Resolution 2015-21, a resolution approving an off-site gambling permit for the Church of Saints Peter and Paul for November 7, 2015, to conduct bingo at the Great Blue Heron.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Fran.
Second.
Okay.
Who seconded?
Jamie seconded it.
Jamie seconded, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much. We're on item number 13. Ron, now it is your turn. Item number 13, Park Streets Report. Ron Fuchs.
Well, when we made out our budgets, we were talking about a plow truck, and we were thinking if we can get it cheaper by buying it now, that we'd probably do that. And I came across one, it was $32,900, or $35,000 with tax and everything, so that would decrease my capital expenditure by $16,000 or something like that.
But yeah, we budgeted 50,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
But
by a
we
little
got
less than
18
15.
from this year yet that we're gonna apply to that.
Yep.
So I'm just coming for approval for that.
Before we approve it though, at the budget meeting, we talked about the possibility that if you could buy it early, and then by buying it early, you can save us a bunch of money, you should go ahead and do it. You obviously were listening. Thank you for A, listening, and thank you B, for saving us a bunch of money, because those are tax dollars, so thank you. All right, Chris, would you read that recommendation, please?
I would. To approve the purchase of a used 1998 Ford snowplow truck from Boyer Trucks for a total purchase price of $35,184.75. Furthermore, that this be paid from line item 1150516413.
I make that motion.
Fran, thank you.
Second.
Dave, thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, if we got something to sell, Ron, well, we buy something, can we sell something?
Oh, that's my next, when it says other here, yeah, we'll go to that.
Okay, with the other, all right.
Okay, anything else, any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, and again, thank you again.
You're welcome. And the next one is other. The county has their annual surplus auction next month, maybe the last Saturday. And I was just wondering if we can sell any surplus item like trucks. I got one truck for sure I'd like to get out, and a cab for our gator, and a snowplow for our gator, and there's a couple other little items. If we can take them to the auction, we can set a limit on it. We gotta get a minimum of so much, otherwise they won't let it go.
So you set a reserve?
Yep, but it costs us $20 if we don't let it go though, which isn't that bad when you're talking thousands of dollars.
Do you think we would be better off just putting it in the paper instead of taking it to
Because then we
was-
wouldn't have to pay a percentage to sell it?
If you know what they're worth or what the nice thing about an auction, you actually get to see once what they are worth.
Yeah.
You know, if you set a minimum, you don't get it, you're not selling it.
Yeah.
And, but the fee on that is 7%.
Yeah.
You sell it, so.
So we can't get 35,000 for that used one? then,
Not
right?
quite.
Okay.
First of all, can we sell, we can, I'm assuming we can authorize the selling of surplus equipment.
Yes.
Okay, so we can do it if we want to. Do we want to sell surplus equipment?
At an auction.
Is it supposed to be bidded? I mean, normally we bid, no? Do bidders come in and, like those cars, like the police department has, they put
The
seal
forfeitures?
bids.
Yeah.
Now, is that the procedure where you're supposed to use? Or
I don't know,
can
that's
you
why I'm
actually,
asking if I can take this, because the county is doing this too, and
yeah.
So the county does the auction?
Actually, it's the Benoit Auction Service.
Frank Immel does it,
No,
right? Colonel
Benoit
Frank?
does it. Benoit Auction Service.
Oh, he does it?
But the county is the ones holding it?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is sponsored through the county, but, and that's where they would be located at too, so we'd be hauling everything there.
It's a live auction.
I can verify that, but if the county's doing it, I'd be shocked if we couldn't.
Well, and I think
Yeah,
that,
because I think the reason with like the forfeited property and stuff, that's a little bit different because it's not actually city-owned property per se.
But the county is selling forfeiture property at this.
Yeah.
They got, I think Mark said 75 vehicles that they got,
Okay.
plus old police cars and so forth. They got quite a few things.
So we have a few things we would like to dump?
Yeah, one of the Freightliners, and I'd like to get rid of, and that plow that we got for, the
Okay.
ATV plow, and,
The Freightliners were those military Freightliners then?
Yeah.
Okay.
and we got a cab. We took it off our Gator. We had a Gator for the treatment plant, but then it went to the parks where they don't need a cab, and we took it off, and it's just sitting there. Plus, I got an old diesel-powered gas pump too. Anything that's big that I don't want to trip over anymore, I want to get rid of. So.
I would think we might as well do a good house cleaning.
No, that's, I mean, like I said, if we get 35 more thousand.
That's right.
we're not-
well, so what, I hear we want him to do it. So he can just create his own list and take care of it, or do we have to approve of the list, or what do we want to do? Just Ron's on
I
his
feel
own?
like we shouldn't have it, he shouldn't have
We
to
don't have
ask
to,
us.
yeah, nitpick.
Because I feel like he should know what goes and what shouldn't.
Okay,
And I feel like we shouldn't get involved.
Just let us
That
know
he's
after.
prudent,
Motion for that?
that
I agree.
he's prudent in doing the right thing.
Yeah, we should have a motion.
okay, is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, good, we have a motion by Fran, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jamie, we have a motion and a second, any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, thank you, motion passes. Sell a lot of stuff.
I was gonna say, before it goes
Make a ton of
down,
money.
I can give you a list of what I send down too, so you know what's going out.
Well,
Or
you'll
just
tell us
after the
at
fact.
every,
Huh?
What went out and what it got.
well, you'll tell us at every meeting anyway, what you dumped and what you didn't.
Yeah.
And you'll remind us frequently.
Yeah. And you can tell us what you got for it too,
Okay.
no matter how bad it is or how
They
good
do
it
write out a check though, you know, friend.
Excellent, Ron, thank you. Anything else? Anything else?
That's it for me.
All right, excellent. Item number 14. Brian, your turn.
Mr. Mayor and Council, a couple of quick updates on the Cold Spring capital improvements. Again, those 2nd and 14th, they're both open to traffic. We'll be looking to, I think we're waiting on 2 signs yet to be installed, 2 street name signs. If they haven't already been, and that should pretty much clean those up for the winter. Red River Avenue, we had obviously some good discussion on that tonight. I again thank the council and the planning commission for the efforts and the work that they've put into looking at the project, looking at the streetscaping, looking at innovative ways to make it work. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I should back up one here on the agenda. We did have a In the packet, I think there was a resolution 2015-20. We're looking to schedule the improvement, the assessment hearing for Second Avenue, portion of the 2015 capital improvements. That was, we had done previously an improvement hearing on that, so that one was planned to be assessed.
And how many people are involved with that? 4?
There's 2 property owners.
2 property owners? Okay.
And the railroad.
That's one of them.
Okay.
Railroad and
Pretty far down though.
Cold Spring.
And you gotta set a date?
And that's what I'm trying to figure out. So do we have to set a date? Is that what?
It's Tuesday.
Yeah, October
Oh,
27th.
there it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's the last,
Okay.
the last meeting in October.
Okay, perfect. So then would you mind please reading out 14B?
Yep. Recommendation to adopt resolution 2015-20, a resolution scheduling a public hearing for the adoption of assessments for the Second Avenue South project.
Questions, council? Otherwise, I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Fran. We need a second.
Second.
Dave, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Sir?
I'll skip back to my report then, if there's no other questions on Second. Main Street, O'Malley and Crone should be starting their topographic survey pretty soon. So I think they had called in some utility meets, so they're about the same update from last time, but they're working on getting that done before the snow flies. The stormwater grant, as we previously talked about, we're gonna delay that project. We're gonna bid it this winter in order to get better bid prices, and it would have been too late in the season really to do it right. But we'll be sending a letter to the adjacent property owners. We had originally talked about at our public meeting that it was gonna be done this year, just to give them a heads up that it will be next year. Otherwise, going on to the wells, the wetland delineation, I think, is currently being reviewed by the governing agencies. So there's other agencies that govern the wetlands. And so when we we go out and find the edge of the wetland, we write a report based on that. That report gets sent to those agencies, and then they schedule a field review where they actually go out and they verify what the person who found the original line of the wetland found, so that it's verified and then it can become official. So we're moving along on that process. As soon as we have those lines really nailed down, that the other agencies are happy with them, we have a pretty good idea of where our test drilling should be for the areas we hope can be production wells.
Brian, that wet land, if there's an acre taken, do we have to find an acre someplace else to substitute for that, or?
Well, I think really what we'll be looking at is just trying to stay out of the wetlands.
Oh, okay.
If,
But if we were involved with wetland, do we find, or wetland some other place?
yeah, and that's typically the case if you were putting in a road for say, and you used up some of the wetland, if it's over a certain amount, you then have to replace that either on site, or you have to buy credits or somehow replace that wetland.
And that's still implemented yet? That's still an ongoing thing, isn't it?
I believe so.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right.
So on ours, we're gonna just do our best to avoid the wetlands entirely.
Okay.
Solves that problem.
Council, anything else? Brian, anything else?
That's all I have.
That's it?
That's it.
Sweet. Any questions, comments? All right, then we're moving on to item number 15 of the agenda.
Recommendation to review and accept payment of the accounts payable according to the list and supplemental list presented by city staff.
Can we get a motion, please?
You can have it, Dave.
I'll make a motion.
Dave, thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Jamie, thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay? So it passes with one abstention. All right. The next thing is item number 16 on the agenda. General questions and comments from Chris and the council. We're gonna start with you this time, Jamie. Anything for us?
I have nothing.
Okay.
I was gonna get the final date of the, farmer's market, but that's still going on. I just thought I'd put a plug in for
Okay, so the farmer's market, what day of the week is
him.
that?
On Wednesdays from 3 to 6:30, I believe,
Okay, and where is it located?
in the parking lot of the country store.
Okay, excellent. All right, anything else? Jan?
Nope.
Fran? Chris?
Have a couple things. At the last city council meeting, I think you had brought up that somebody had talked to you about an ordinance on things on the sidewalk, you know,
yep.
whether businesses put things out. You referred it to the planning commission, and at the planning commission meeting on the 16th, it was 3.5 hours long, and it got to be 10 o'clock, and they said, could we table that till the next meeting? So I'm just reporting, they are gonna talk about it, but it's gonna be next month.
Okay.
And then, on that, along those same lines, another item on the agenda was, your planning document, to go through that, and they asked if it'd be all right to table that one more meeting too, just to be more constructive, because everybody was getting tired. So I just wanted to report that those two things are still on, in the plan, just putting off.
Didn't happen yet.
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that. Speaking of things that we talked about before, earlier this week, we had sent you an email because people had asked the question with regards to how the residents of the city of Cold Spring were to recycle yard waste. Can you report anything on that?
Yeah, I can. We have 3 garbage haulers, West Central Sanitation, Advanced Disposal, and Waste Management. Those are the 3 haulers that we license. Part of licensing them are they are required to provide free composting to the residents of the city. West Central has, they offer free drop-off at Mississippi Topsoils. They have an agreement with them. Advanced Disposal and Waste Management. Advanced Disposal has free curbside pickup. Waste Management also does free curbside pickup, but just on Tuesdays. Now, this is for compost. I'm not exactly sure what that all entails. I guess if people aren't sure, they could call the company and ask what that includes. So, and this, oh, and I should just add, that goes from April 15th till November 1st.
Okay. And otherwise, if people have questions, they can always contact Lois at City Hall?
Sure. Anybody at City Hall.
Anybody. I just
Yeah.
wanted to say Lois because she's sitting over there and she's not getting any attention. At one of our last meetings, we also talked about the idea of memorializing thoughts about Red River Avenue. Since that time, I've had several people stop me and ask me about that. And they've asked me what they should do with their songs or their poems or their stories. Where should they drop them off? What should they do with them? What we've come up with is that you can drop them by City Hall or the Rocori Senior Center or the local historical society, or you can even drop them off at my office if you want to. But the caution is, please do not drop off, do not deliver original pictures, anything that if it were to have gotten lost, you would be crushed or devastated. Don't drop those things off. If it's an original picture that you would need to have, then copy that picture and drop off the copy of the picture. Otherwise, you can drop those kinds of things off. I have one more real quick thing. Ron, again, thank you for getting the truck and saving us a bunch of money. We may not say it often enough to you and to the rest of the staff, but we appreciate your efforts. So please keep doing that. Then the last thing I wanted to say is, City Council, don't forget that tomorrow we have another meeting. We're going to do a workshop, and we're going to begin the process of working on the process of hiring our next city administrator. So I'll see you all tomorrow night. The next thing I think we have, unless somebody else has got something else, is a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Jamie, thank you.
I'll second it.
Dave, thank you. Motion a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Let's go home. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.